JD Vance had this contentious interview with Meet the Press a while ago, and I wanted to get around to reacting to this video, and I finally got the chance to do so. So here is JD Vance's full interview with NBC News' Kristen Welker on Meet the Press, talking about, among many things, some remarks that Donald Trump has made.
Joining me now is Senator JD Vance, a top finalist to be former President Trump's running mate. Senator Vance, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to talk to you about the immunity ruling and the implications. This is what Donald Trump said last year about wanting to target his political opponents. Take a listen.
I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family.
Senator, if former President Trump were to win, if you were to be his vice president, would you support him appointing a special prosecutor to go after his political enemies, the Bidens?
Well, first of all, Kristen, I find it interesting how much the media and the Democrats have lost their mind over this particular quote. Donald Trump is talking about appointing a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden for wrongdoing. Joe Biden has done exactly that for the last few years and has done far more in addition to that to engage in a campaign of lawfare against his political opposition. I think what Donald Trump is simply saying is we ought to investigate the prior administration. There are obviously many instances of wrongdoing. The House Oversight Committee has identified a number of corrupt business transactions that may or may not be criminal. Of course, you have to investigate to find out. So I think Donald Trump saying, look, let's do the basic work of investigating wrongdoing is a totally reasonable thing for him to do. And frankly, the Biden administration has done far worse. So if you think that what Donald Trump is proposing is a threat to democracy, isn't what Biden has already done a massive threat to our system of law and government?
Senator, just to be very clear, though, Joe Biden didn't appoint a special prosecutor. The Attorney General did that. Trump was indicted by grand juries. He was found guilty by a jury of his peers in New York. But can we just go back to the core question?
I mean, isn't he facing federal? Wasn't he facing federal crimes or federal charges? I could be wrong, but I thought that he's facing federal charges. I think one thing that the right needs to get right with their messaging is that the lawfare against Trump is not dictated by Joe Biden, but it's being done by Democrats who have a vested interest in getting Donald Trump in jail. Like, they hate him, they hate his guts, they want him in jail, they want him imprisoned. Many of them have actually said so publicly. So these sorts of investigations, if you can call them that, they can be, I said immoral. I think that sort of like puts maybe a religious spin on it. I don't mean it in a religious sense, but like they can be wrong, unethical, I think is the secular way to put it. They can be unethical without having been dictated by Joe Biden. You don't need to say, oh, look what Joe Biden has done. Joe Biden, I think, hasn't done nearly as much as, the investigators in Georgia, the investigators in New York, the investigators in these various states who are abusing their power to try to get Trump in jail and restrain and inhibit Donald Trump as much as possible for him gearing up for being president in 2024 and beyond, if that is something that, the people vote in and decide should be the case.
Question here, would you support him taking such an action? It sounds like you're saying, yes, you would.
I would absolutely support investigating prior wrongdoing by our government. Absolutely, that's what you have to have in a system of law and order, Kristen. But I have to reject the premise here. Joe Biden appointed the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who, of course, answers to Joe Biden, can be fired by Joe Biden. So the idea that the Biden administration has...
True. Yeah, there was that, too. It's like, oh, Joe Biden didn't elect a special prosecutor. The AG elected a special prosecutor. Not like Joe Biden has a, say who may or may not be the Attorney General.
Has nothing to do with the appointment of the special prosecutor. I think completely betrays a misunderstanding of how our system of government actually works. And of course, Kristen, we have to make this point, Kristen. that the prosecution of Donald Trump in New York, which I think now is fundamentally been thrown in doubt by this immunity case, it was one of the main guys was a Department of Justice official in the Biden administration who jumped ship to join a local prosecutor's office to go after Donald Trump.
And yet the DOJ
if that
told
doesn't make you question the legitimacy of the prosecution, that's a problem.
Well, Senator, that happens all the time. People are appointed from Washington, but the DOJ told Congress, testified this week
Kristen,
that it reviewed
it happens.
Hold on, Senator,
are you really saying, Kristen?
Senator, let me finish my sentence.
All
then
the
I'll
time
let you finish. Hold on.
The number.
Let me just finish this. The DOJ told Congress this week it reviewed all communications since Biden took office and found no contact between federal prosecutors and those involved with that case in New York. Can you stick to the substance of the question, though? Let me just ask, because I just want to stick with this line of theory that you are laying out, which is you are saying it's not okay for Joe Biden to weaponize the Justice Department. If it's not okay for Joe Biden to weaponize the Justice Department, as you say, which there's no evidence of that, why is it okay for Donald Trump to do that?
Okay, sorry. Hold on, sorry. No, sorry. She just said that there's no evidence that Joe Biden weaponized the Justice Department against Donald Trump. Okay, sorry. All right, pressing forward here.
Do that.
Well, Kristen, first of all, you said that it happens all the time, that the number 3 person in the Department of Justice jumps ship to join a local prosecutor's office to go after the president's political opponent. I don't think that's ever happened in the history of American democracy, and I don't think that we should legitimize it. Now, if Donald Trump's attorney general had his number 2 or his number 3 jump ship to a local prosecutor's office in Ohio or Wisconsin, and that person then went after Donald Trump's political opposition, that's a different conversation.
Senator,
all he's suggesting is that we should investigate credible arguments of wrongdoing. That's all that Donald Trump is saying. That is not a threat to democracy. That's merely reinforcing our system of law and government.
Bottom line, you are okay with Donald Trump appointing a special prosecutor to go after his political enemies, which would include Joe Biden. You're just, to button that up, it sounds like you're saying yes. Let me move on, though, to my next question.
The deceptive framing is insane.
Talk to you about the Heritage Foundation.
Oh my goodness. See, and I wish that we went back to the days of just like Brian Williams, where like the most important thing you were lying about is whether you or not you in a particular helicopter. And now we've got people lying to this dude. We've got Kristen Welker lying to JD Vance's face about what it is that he's saying he supports.
It's a conservative think tank in Washington. It shapes the agenda they would like to pay with Donald Trump appointing a special prosecutor to go after his political enemies, which would include Joe Biden.
By the way, for the record, I haven't made my mind up on Project 2025. I did a stream once where I looked at Project 2025 and I didn't upload a video on Non-Newbie Highlights because I was uncomfortable with my lack of understanding of Project 2025 even after reading the articles, because I was unsure of the potential bias that the articles that I read had. And so I felt like my findings from the stream were still relatively inconclusive. It would not have been helpful to make a video about that. I just want to preface all this by saying I admit I don't know a whole lot about Project 2025. I've talked to one person IRL who seems relatively knowledgeable about it, but he seems very pro Project 2025 as well. So it's possible that he might have framed it in a particular way, not accusing the guy of lying if he's watching this video, but just saying, if you support something, you're probably going to emphasize certain aspects of it and de-emphasize other aspects of it. I would like to understand it in its totality, and the project is very large. There are a lot of documents in there, so there might be something that he missed, something that he omitted for the lack of time or simplicity's sake or whatever. I just would like to have a far more comprehensive understanding of Project 2025 before I speak on it personally. However, JD Vance, I think, is tied to Project 2025. So I can bounce off of whatever he has to say. I'm willing to hear his thoughts on the matter.
You're just, to button that up, it sounds like you're saying yes. Let me move on, though, to my next question. I want to talk to you about the Heritage Foundation. It's a conservative think tank in Washington. It shapes the agenda they would like to see in a Trump second term. The president said this after the Supreme Court's ruling this week. Take a look.
We're in the process of taking this country back No one in the audience should be despairing. No one should be discouraged. We ought to be really encouraged by what happened yesterday. We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Do you support those calls for a revolution, and would political violence ever be justified?
Well, of course, political violence is never justified, Kristen.
My goodness. Now, I know I'm probably going to get hate for this, but I personally hate this myself whenever I see people saying political violence is never justified, because there are certainly some cases where it is. Now, you should certainly avoid it at all costs. But like, I don't know, let's say for example, like the police is coming to, with guns to steal your, I don't know, your sons and daughters away, because of something that you said on social media. If you were to fight back, that's political violence, right? Let's say, I mean, I'm not gonna throw in hypotheticals because I think hypotheticals can get very dangerous, but there's some forms of political violence that I think can be justified. I don't know. Even the American Civil War, that one's kind of iffy. I don't know. Like I hate political violence. But I think that there is a very, very narrow sliver of where political violence can be justified. Like especially like extreme cases of abuse of the citizens or oppression, where yes, political violence is justified. That I hate how people oftentimes sort of like close the window on that altogether. Like, I don't think we're anywhere close to political violence being justified in America. I'm not seeing anything where Americans should be violent in America either now or anytime in the near future. Like I'm talking like next 5 years, if not 10 or more. I know some people might be a little bit more pessimistic and calling for an American Civil War. I'm not. I don't think that there's anything going on right now that legitimizes political violence, in my opinion. But at the same time, to say that political violence is never justified, it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous to say that, I think. You would have to denounce the American Revolution if you're going to say that political violence is never justified.
You'll have to ask the president of the Heritage Foundation to defend his remarks if you'd like to do that. I will say, look, the Heritage Foundation does a lot of good work. It does a lot of things that I disagree with, a lot of things that I agree with. But the Heritage Foundation is a nonprofit organization that works on public policy, and I think it's an important part of how D.C. functions and operates. We'll continue to have important conversations in the Republican Party with a whole host of think tanks from the right and from the left as we craft public policy. That's the way the city works, and again, I'm not going to be the person who serves as the spokesperson for the Heritage Foundation. I don't have any affiliation.
Sounds like you're distancing yourself from...
I didn't know that he didn't have any affiliation. I thought he did. I thought he supported Project 2025. But I will say, like, we're getting to like a third way through the video. I'm surprised at how well this interview is going. JD Vance has sort of been pitched as a strange, awkward man. And I think in some ways he does still, portray some, mannerisms that remind me of Jeb Bush. But in general, he's holding his own in this article. He's keeping his cool for the most part. Even though Kristen Welker is lying about him in certain aspects, he's still doing a good job here. So maybe, like, I was actually sort of like bad talking, IRL with some friends, the pick of JD Vance, because I didn't think he's as charismatic as a VP pick should be. I didn't think that he was moderate enough to attract new voters. And while I agree with all of that, this interview here sort of is showing that he can definitely hold his own in an interview with people who disagree with him or someone who's willing to or is out to slander him. So is this actually, maybe JD Vance actually isn't that bad of a VP pick?
Foundation, I don't have any affiliation.
Sounds like you're distancing yourself from those comments that talk of political violence.
Look, Kristen, I certainly don't think political violence is justified. That's certainly actually not what I think that Kevin Roberts was saying to begin with. But again, have him on your program to defend what he said, and I think that's the best thing to do.
Let me ask you specifically about Project 2025 for our viewers so that they know. It's basically a policy blueprint for a second Trump presidency. It's
very cool that Kristen Welker's lav mic is also pink, matching her pantsuit, which also looks rather nice. I've never seen a pink lav mic before. That's just really interesting. I didn't know that they made those. That's very cool. Props to the design or prop department or whatever who gave her that. Like, bro, very, very nice.
Supported by the Heritage Foundation and other conservative groups. The Biden campaign has said Project 25, quote, should scare every single American. It would give Trump limitless power over our daily lives. Among the things they are calling for is reversing approval of the abortion pill, mifepristone. But Donald Trump says he supports access to that pill, actually. Do you support access?
Well, I think when you put it like that, maybe Donald Trump doesn't support 2025, or doesn't support Project 2025, Kristen Welker. Maybe Trump doesn't support 2025. Maybe he's not on board with all the things that Project 2025 supports. This was the big problem with one of the major policy-based attacks against Donald Trump was attacking Project 2025 and assuming that Donald Trump is going to support it. Now, they're sort of stuck in this situation where, you know, he's literally outright condemned at least one, right, according to Kristen Welker, one of Project 2025's policy positions. What are you going to say now? That he's still going to be the Project 2025 president? That's impossible if he's opposing this policy that Project 2025 supports.
Access to abortion medication as Donald Trump does?
Well, Kristen, you asked about Project 2025, and I want to be clear here that Trump explicitly has said his own transition team runs the Trump transition and will run the Trump administration. Again, you have a whole host of organizations, some of which have good ideas, some of which have bad ideas, and some of which have both. And I'm sure the Trump administration will talk to a lot of people as it's crafting an agenda to bring back American manufacturing jobs, to lower inflation, and to
True. Agenda 47 is the plan, not Project 2025.
Bring peace and prosperity back to the world. That's the whole reason why me and so many others are trying to reelect Donald Trump, is because the agenda actually worked. It was his agenda, and I think it'll work again for the American people. On the question of the abortion pill, what so many of us have said is that, look, we certainly don't, the Supreme Court made a decision saying that the American people should have access to that medication. Donald Trump has supported that opinion. I support that opinion. I think it's important to say that we actually have to have an important conversation in this country about what our abortion policy should be. Donald Trump is the pragmatic leader here. He's saying most abortion policy is going to be decided by the states. We want to make it easier and more affordable for young women and parents to have families to begin with. We want to lower housing costs, eliminate those surprise medical bills that so many families see after they have a baby. So that's the Trump and Republican approach to this.
I love Kristen Welker cutting off J.D. Vance when he's talking about policies that will affect mothers and parents. Pro-choicers love to pretend that pro-lifers just hate women. They just want to oppress them and control their bodies like they're Lego minifigures. When in reality, it's just that we care about the sanctity of life. We don't want to see people killed. And we realize that life is hard for a lot of people who are considering these options. So it is in the best interest of the country, even if abortion is completely gone, to make life better for these folks.
That so many families see after they have a baby. That's the Trump and Republican approach to this issue. Meanwhile, Joe Biden wants taxpayer-funded abortion up to the moment of birth. It's so crazy to me how the Democrats frame this as Republicans. Just let me finish, Kristen. They frame Democrats as being reasonable and pragmatic, when in reality, Republicans are the one trying to find some common ground here.
As you know, very few abortions take place later in pregnancy, and almost always because there is a medical emergency. I know Trump is trying to...
Is she saying that most abortions that happen later in the pregnancy are for medical reasons? I think that is true. That sounds right.
Distance himself from Project 2025, but we have to point out that a number of people who are involved with it are former Trump officials: Ben Carson, Peter Navarro, Russ Vought, and others. But just to be clear, you support mifepristone being accessible?
Yes, Kristen, I do. But again, on the Project 2025 issue.
Huh? Huh? Oh, no. For those of you who are not familiar with mifepristone, this is actually extremely disappointing. I did not know this. Okay, mifepristone, also known by its development code RU486, is a medication typically used in combination with mifepristol to bring about medical abortion during pregnancy and manage early miscarriage. This combination is 97% effective during the first 63 days, 9 weeks of pregnancy. Is also effective in the second trimester of pregnancy. Is taken by mouth. So this guy supports abortion, at least to some degree. That's extremely disappointing as someone who is pro-life. I am tiring. I am tiring of these pro-lifers who support abortion. It's ridiculous. These people are pretending that they support abortion, but like, oh, what about rape and incest? Oh, well, we should let mifepristone be legal at least. No. These are the positions of someone who lacks principles on this issue. You cannot say that all lives matter. You cannot say that the life of the unborn is sacred, and then put out statements like these. And maybe he wants mifepristone to be used in certain select situations, like for medical reasons or whatever. I've never heard of mifepristone being used for medical reasons. I think one of the big things is people want to buy it and order it in the mail. I could be wrong, but like, if what he means is he thinks people should just be able to buy mifepristone and have abortions within the first 9 weeks, that's a big L for me. That's a big L.
Yes, Kristen, I do. But again, on the Project 2025 issue, what the media and the Democrats are trying to do is attach its most unpopular elements to the Trump administration. It's a 900-page document. I guarantee there are things that Trump likes and dislikes about that 900-page document, but he is the person who will determine the agenda of the next administration. All he said very explicitly is, I am in charge of the next administration because I'm the person running for president. It's just important to make that clarification.
Let me ask you something that caught our eye. This is something you wrote in the New York Times op-ed in 2017 about former President Barack Obama. You criticized his policies, but you also said, quote, "It is one of the great failures of recent political history that the Republican Party was too often unable to disconnect legitimate political disagreements from the fact that the president himself is an admirable man. For at a pivotal time in my life, Barack Obama gave me hope that a boy who grew up like me could still achieve the most important of my dreams. For that," you write, "I will miss him. And the example he set," you wrote that just days before Donald Trump was inaugurated. Do you still consider Barack Obama to be an admirable man who you miss?
Well, you know, I grew up in a broken family, Kristen, and I just wanted to be a good husband and dad. And certainly Barack Obama, despite my many political disagreements with him, he's clearly a good husband and a father. By the way, I'd say the same thing about Donald Trump, whose children love him. And I think this is one of the things the media often misses about Trump, is how genuinely devoted he is to his family.
I think you'd also say the same thing about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I don't know as much about Kamala Harris's relationship with his daughter, with her daughter, but I mean, her daughter seems to like Kamala Harris well enough. You know, they don't seem to be enemies. Tim Walz definitely seems close with his family. I think that a lot of these politicians aren't like these evil, maniacal megalomaniacs who are completely lacking of empathy and just pure narcissists at the heart. I don't think that's how that's what a lot of these people are. So, you know, I think you could probably swing a dead cat at a white dude for Harris rally and still find a lot of good, caring husbands and fathers. You know, it's a layup. It's a softball to ask, do you think a Democrat is a good father or a good husband? Because I think plenty of them are.
His grandchildren, and this is about Trump, is how genuinely devoted he is to his family, to his grandchildren, and how part of his pro-life messaging, his fundamental pro-life view, is that we ought to make it easier for more American families to have those thriving children and thriving families. So certainly I think we've been blessed with a lot of good examples across our country. And yeah, absolutely, was Barack Obama a good president? No. Was he a good husband and father? Yes.
So he's still an admirable man?
That's just what I said, Kristen. Absolutely.
All right. I have to ask you about Veep stakes. Of course, have you gotten the call from Donald Trump? Has he asked you to be his running mate?
I have not gotten the call, Kristen, and I'll certainly, maybe not the first person that I'd let know if that happened, but we'll let the media know if I ever get that call. But most importantly, Kristen, we're just trying to work to elect Donald Trump. Whoever his vice president is, he's got a lot of good people he could choose from. It's the policies that worked and the leadership style that worked for the American people. I think we have to bring that back to the White House, and I'm fighting to try to do that.
Well, here we are about a week before the Republican convention. Before I let you go, can you say unequivocally, here and now, that you will accept the results of the 2024 election no matter what they are?
No. Why are people so bent on this? This is such a ridiculous question. Like, bro, watch this. Imagine if Republicans blatantly cheat in the 2024 election. Right? Let's say that we, I don't know, murder a bunch of, the people who are carrying the ballots, like the mail-in ballots who were supposed to process them, steal all the mail-in ballots and then burn them in a massive bonfire and then win like a bunch of states as a result of that. Democrats should not accept the results of that election. They shouldn't. And if there's shadiness done in this 2024 election, enough that is proven, then yeah, like we shouldn't accept that election either. I don't hear anyone saying, "Oh, do you unequivocally support the Venezuelan election?" No one is asking that question. So this is just an absurd request to just accept the results of an election that hasn't even happened yet.
So long as it's a free and fair election, Kristen, of course we will. We will use constitutional processes to challenge issues if we think there are issues. But if it's a free and fair election, we will do what the Constitution requires. We will respect the results, and I expect those results are going to be to re-elect Donald Trump. It was a free and fair election in 2020. Donald Trump took his concerns to court. He lost in court, but he still has not conceded.
And he left. He left office. Where were all the videos of the Secret Service dragging him out by his coattails? You don't see them, right? Oh, Trump didn't concede. Well, he thinks the election was stolen, but he did accept the results, at least to the extent of leaving the White House.
Do you understand that when you refuse to commit unequivocally, that feeds into people's concerns, skepticism about the nation's electoral process?
Well, Kristen, I don't agree with that, actually. I think that feeding into people's concerns about our electoral process is that one half of America's political segment, they won't support legislation that makes it harder for illegal aliens to vote. They won't support universal voter ID in our elections, even though you have to present ID to do almost anything in this country.
Yo, this dude is good. Okay, I can see why Trump picked him now. Bro, perfect way to turn around that question. Where she's like, "Oh, aren't you sowing seeds of discord by, saying that it's fine to doubt elections sometimes?" And J.D. Vance is like, "Bruh, you guys made these elections doubtable in the first place. What are you guys talking about?"
Well, Kristen, I don't agree with that, actually. I think that feeding into people's concerns about our electoral process is that one half of America's political segment, they won't support legislation that makes it harder for illegal aliens to vote. They won't support universal voter ID in our elections, even though you have to present ID to do almost anything in this country. I think taking people's concerns seriously about election fraud is the way to reinforce security and confidence in our elections.
Yeah, Senator, it's already against the law for non-citizens to vote. But just on that very point,
I think it's a federal law, but it's not a state law. And some states are some states have actually legalized the voting of illegal immigrants, I believe. So if you have a federal law, I think it's not as likely that it's going to be investigated, especially because you're not going to have federal agents on the ground looking and seeing what's happening versus cops are here and there. Depends. There might be everywhere. There might be only around a bush every two miles or so. But there are cops generally in most cities and states. So it's helpful for it to be a state crime as well as a federal crime to vote as an illegal immigrant. But if you're not having proper monitoring of that at the polling places on election day, how many of those instances are actually going to be caught,
When others refuse to say, yes, we will accept the election results, do you understand how that undermines people's confidence in the electoral system?
Didn't you just ask that question? Did I rewind or something?
Kristen, what I just said is I don't agree with that. What I think actually undermines people's confidence in the electoral system is when the media is incurious about obvious examples of problems in our electoral system. I think we've got great elections, but a lot of things could be better in certain states. I want to work to make that happen so the American people have greater confidence in their elections. That's what I'll keep doing.
Senator, thank you for being here. Please come back when you get that phone call, if not beforehand. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching.
Wow. He did a really good job of handling some extremely hostile questions. What are these comments? What are these comments here? I'm wondering what they're going to be like. Okay, this is why I'm glad the legacy media is dying. Ask a slanted question, talk over the guest, no one hears his answer. It wasn't that bad. She isn't asking to learn the answers. She's asking questions to try to prove her own points. Right, which is why like multiple times she asks the same question twice or thrice. It's like, bruh, can you chill? I'm old enough to remember when journalists tried to hide their bias and report news, not sell their own opinions as fact. This lady is a great example of what is wrong with this country. True. She just quit answering his questions for him when the answers aren't what she wants. True. She did that, didn't she? She was like, oh, so you're saying this. He's like, no. She's like, well, sounds like you're saying this. He's like, no. Like, at one point, poor JD Vance just like gave up. He's like, man, I'm done with you, lady. Oh man, that was a good interview. I think that maybe JD Vance isn't actually that bad of a of a pick for VP for Trump as I thought. Is he relatively rizzless? Sure, but he does have some riz in the bank. To use, so it just sounds so weird when I put it like that. But it is true. It is true.